For all you people watching this show, I know you have high expectations of Jamaicans when they go overseas to compete. You're always asking them, you come back with a gold. Please, recognize this sport requires years and years of experience. What we're trying to do is we want to show the world that Jamaica indeed has the best athletes. It takes a good athlete to learn a sport very quickly, especially a sport you never heard of before.
I started running track 1979, the year before the Moscow Olympics, and ABC Wild World of Sport had a series going to Moscow, and in it they highlighted athletes from all over the world, different disciplines, and there was a common thread to all that linked all of their stories. They were very average and ordinary people with extraordinary dreams, and it dawned on me then that really, anyone can become an Olympian. Anyone can accomplish incredible dreams if they dare to dream extraordinarily and have an equal desire to go after them.
So we're sitting around talking about the upcoming Summer Olympics, and they were bragging about how well they're going to do, and of course they do. If we're a small island of 3 million people on a per capita basis, they win more medals in the Olympics than anybody else. The conversation came about, well, Jamaica's never been to the Winter Olympics. And I sort of left, said, okay, let me see what I can do. That previous day, I was watching the pushcart derby. I said, oh, it's the bobsled. I knew enough, just barely enough about bobsledding to know that half the race is how quickly can you push like a 600-pound object before you have to get in. And then the driver basically lets the bobsled drive itself.
It's very similar to the pushcart derby. Two people in a sled or cart with wheels that go down a steep slope with curves and bends at very fast speeds. The same principles are involved, except there's just no snow or no ice. We can encourage other athletes throughout Jamaica, not just in Kingston, to try out to see if they'd be interested in the sport.
I'm in the Army. My colonel sees me run a cross-country race, and I finished 14 from 40, and he's impressed. And these guys had come to the Army looking for athletes, so my colonel suggested that I tried out for the team.
At the time I was training for the Summer Olympics anyway, so I said it would be a great way for me to go to a summer and then go to a Winter Olympics.
I think about 40 people showed up, and with the help of the American bobsled team, they sent down two guys to put them through tests that the Americans use as they evaluate athletes. And just to explain the sport to them, I had a little video, and the video had crashes. Turn the lights back on, look around, there's probably 8 people left.
I do the trials, and it ended on a Friday, and I go back to the officers' mess and I fall asleep, and I wake up Saturday morning and my friends are calling me the Olympian.
My family didn't even know I made the team. When they heard my name on the news, they were shocked.
Maybe 2 weeks later, someone gave me an airline ticket and said, hey, you're going bobsledding. This bobsled idea now became my chance to live the Olympic dream.
George called and said, would you be interested in coaching the Jamaican bobsled team? Well, I started laughing. I said, I didn't even know they had a bobsled team. I didn't even know they had ice.
The US team is there and they're practicing their starts on an ice rink. And they go, hey, you guys want to join us? And we go, yeah. And so in true Jamaican style, we stroll out on the ice, oh, let's go beat them. I mean, mind you, this is the first time we're seeing a bobsled, first time we're going to try to walk on ice. I'd seen snow, but not ice. I'd seen ice in tall glasses of lemonade.
We didn't have a sled, so we rented a sled from a Canadian team, and we started training.
My first run, as they nudge us off, I just resigned. I'm like, if I die, I die. Yeah, but I'm doing this. I'm doing it. I'm not going back to Jamaica, not bobsledding, you know? It was nerve-wracking. I was scared to death. But here's the amazing thing. By the third run, I was hooked.
Teaching somebody to drive a bobsled, the first thing you do is you teach them how to drive it safely. If you miss just a hair, you're on your top. And Dudley adapted to that well. He was a very good bobsled driver.
It's very fast and it's a very rough sport. And if you like that sort of thing, it's good for you. It's good for the adrenaline pump.
Who is on the team?
I have Devon Harris, Frederick Powell, Michael White.
I was a very outstanding sprinter, and Dudley was a helicopter pilot, so he had the hand coordination. So we adapted to the sports real quick.
It was a perfect choice. Bobsledding allows you really to transfer your athletic talents and skills and abilities, the explosive part of it from whatever sport, track and field in our case, and adapt it. We went back home and we had the makeshift sled on the Army base in Kingston. Every afternoon during the week for 3 hours and 6 hours on a Saturday morning, we'd push that thing. That's practicing our starts, back and forth.
One of the criteria for qualifying for the Olympics was that you had to have competed in a World Cup race. So we're over in Innsbruck, we're training, and then we did the race in Innsbruck. We beat 4 teams with only about 30 or 40 runs under our belt. I said, hey, we're gonna make this. But then all this feeling good got shattered. 10 days to go. Now we're being told, sorry, you can't come.
That was a bad day. I got really angry. And I left there, and I went back to my hotel room and I got a copy of the rules. And I put it on the table. I said, you show me in that rule book where we can't compete. And they couldn't do it.
So I put some calls out to various people. Prince Albert, who was also a bobsledder, and also, perhaps more importantly, was a vice president of the Olympic Committee. So people went out there and made some calls. Sure enough, about 4 or 5 days later, Mike calls me back up. Hey, they changed their mind.
You know, I was so upset about that. Them trying to block us that I didn't care. I more so wanted to rub it in. The more they watched and waited for us to fail, the better we got.
George Fitch, I think he had surmised that once this got out in the press, we would have corporate sponsors beating down the door. And it got out in the press and it didn't happen.
The marketing, the fundraising was a complete disaster. It was a serious miscalculation on my part. I couldn't get the Jamaican government, Jamaican businesses to back me on this. And so the funding's coming out of my pocket. They just didn't believe I could pull this off with so little time. And that's how the shirts came about.
At nights we'd go into a club and we'd boogie up beside a couple and go, hey man, you want to buy a shirt? You know, the guy would say no, but the girl said yes. And so he paid for the shirt and we had dinner the next night.
And then of course, when we got to Calgary, this was the hottest souvenir item.
Even in the stores here in Calgary, look at this, Ernie. They've got sweatshirts out. This is probably the hottest thing in town. There's a waiting line at the local Hudson Bay department store.
When we hit Calgary, we realized all this attention we're getting was kind of amazing.
Opening ceremonies had a noise meter. Home team Canada got the loudest. Jamaica was second.
Jamaica dan. Dudley Stokes, een van de bobsleiers van Jamaica.
The crowd was so behind us, it was like the greatest feeling in the world.
Growing up and watching the Olympic Games and seeing these men and women march into the stadium and thinking, wow, those are some of the best athletes in the world. And you know they're on TV all over the world. And then one day, you're that guy marching into the cheers of 60,000 people, more cameras than you can possibly count.
The place was packed all the way down the bottom run. Jamaican flags and people rooting for the Jamaicans. And I'd never seen anything like it.
They were the bobsled celebrities of Calgary, always smiling, very charismatic.
We do a lot of TV interviews, a lot of selling shirts.
I mean, they had a theme song.
Jamaica bobsled, ragamuffin, Jamaica bobsled, rough and toughin', Calgary, here we come, so watch out.
They didn't look like bobsled athletes. That was part of their attraction, too. I mean, how athletic they were was probably best in evidence on the dance floor. So all of these phenomenal athletes, the Germans, Russians, and Swiss, who are going to win the medals, just were ignored. People look up at the monitor and they see that the Swiss have started and they go get a hot dog and a can of beer. You know, it was so bizarre.
When we showed up in Calgary, everybody thought it was a joke. For the first month, they're like, oh, these guys come from tropical country, they just came here. The coaches, especially European coaches, they don't want you mess up the ice.
The fact that we were from Jamaica, in our minds anyway, had no relevance. We were going to come and compete and be as good as we can and hopefully beat some of the best at it.
"4 days, 2 trips a day. That's all they had. 8 practice trips. That's it, in a lifetime. But George and I thought about it, talked about it, and as long as Dudley felt like he could do it, he was safe, then let's go for it.
We rent a 4-man sled, probably one of the worst sled in the Olympics, and we had one of the greatest start time at the top. At the time you had 3 great sprinters behind Dudley.
After the 2 heats of the first day, we were standing ahead of 7 teams. Word hit the streets. The Jamaicans had trying to 4.
It had been a week of hilarity at the Bob Run, and everybody was feeling great that Sunday, and everyone was still enjoying themselves, and everybody had forgotten the fact that when a sled is going 73 miles an hour through the Kreisel, which was the big turn, the wicked turn, bobsled's not that safe a sport.
I'm down at the bottom, watching up in the monitor. He's going in too high. Boom! Next thing I see is his head is out of the sled, banging against this ice wall. I said, oh my God, my worst nightmare.
You feel like you're in slow motion, like you're going through the twilight zone. Everything just slows down as the sled leaves the ice and goes airborne, and then it spins, and you're like, it's almost like an out-of-body experience. You're watching this, and then it slams onto the ice, and you find yourself back in the sled.
In a bobsled race or a luge race, when you crash, you've still got the rest of the course to deal with.
The worst part of it is the horrible sound of the fiberglass rubbing against the ice and the smell of burning fiberglass. And you see flashes of ice.
Now everyone's horrified, and all of the fun has gone out of this thing. The Jamaicans were good athletes. They were inexperienced bobsledders. They could push and they could get in. All bets were off once they were on the track.
People were telling me, you take a team like this and you're gonna kill them. And that was going through my mind. Surely he snapped his neck. I just get in the bobsled track at the finish line, just start running down the track. Finally, we came to a point where the bobsled had finally rested. Nobody's coming out. Oh my God, it's not just Dudley, I killed them all. So I'm checking them and so on. And they're just saying, we're fine, get that sled, and we're gonna go across the finish line.
It becomes clear that everyone's okay, and then they go down the outwalk, you know, from the finish line, and they're high-fiving people, and they're back to being the Jamaican bobsled team.
And that, I think, really endeared them to the crowd and to the fans, that, you know, we're Jamaicans, we're proud.
With the dancing, with the sweatshirts, with the theme song, ultimately with the crash, every time you turned around, they were adding to the story. By the time the bobsled competition ended, they were famous.
And let me tell you, man, Jamaican bobsledders will be ready in 92. Keep training us. Going for the gold next time.
Can't feel no sun. Rise above it. You can do it. Rise above it. You can do it.
The movie was typical Hollywood. There were like 2 things in the movie, the crash and the scene about showing the bobsled movie where everybody walks out. That's it.
They did a good job in depicting the spirit of the team. You know, it's obviously a comedy. They took a lot of poetic license. They stretched some truth or made up some to make it funny.
This Jamaican bobsled team was a real thing. It was a real deal. It was blood, sweat, and tears. Historic athletes who changed bobsledding.
They were at the vanguard of this athleticism movement. How quickly that became a lesson to the federations, both bobsled and luge, was absolutely remarkable.
I found sponsorship money and then used proceeds from the sale of the movie rights to Disney to also provide funding. So for the next 4 years prior to Albertville, we went to quite a few World Cup races. We were able to buy a very good sled, and we recruited more athletes.
You can't just have all the European countries dominating the sports. You gotta develop the sport to the next level and get other countries to participate.
A bobsled race is won in hundredths of a second, not seconds. So the start is critical. And they had the 7th fastest start in the entire world at the 80 Olympics. And that's saying a lot. And if people want to make a cartoon caricature out of it, then that's how they see it. But those Jamaican guys, they didn't see it that way at all. They were having fun. They had the time of their life. They had the time of their life. So die.
Do-up, slip, slip, slide. Do-up, slip, slip, slide. Bob, bob, bobbin', bob, bob, sleigh. Jamaican bobsled, yeah! In a sunny down south, tropical isle, we bring you a warm Jamaican smile. We've been training, gaining, straining and painting, but we ain't complaining. Jamaica bobsled, we're ragamuffin. Jamaica bobsled, we're rough and toughin'.